going to talk about design and ethics. I'm Josh Kinal. I'm a lead experience designer at ThoughtWorks, as Rick said, and that means I actually design experiences. I design experiences of and for people who use technology and for the people who work with people who use technology. I make sure we have reason, thought, expectation and opportunity to adjust what we're designing when required. My primary goal when I work is to make sure that nobody's life is more difficult than it needs to be. It's just a small thing. So just in case you have to take an urgent call or something, this is what you need to know. Build a list of principles for your project. Put them on a wall, refer to them regularly. Ask yourself if you're still living up to them. Ask yourself if they're still relevant. Are they still relevant in 3 months? If that's all you get out of this talk, then that's going to improve the work that you do, no doubt. But I think there's a little bit more that you can get out of this talk. I mean, there better be. I've got another 20 minutes. So just a quick primer, ethics. Ethics are very unhelpfully defined as a collection of moral principles. Thanks, academics. Morals are this binary distinction between right and wrong, good and bad. So killing is bad. Giving charity is good. Stealing is bad. Saving someone's life is good. That's morals. It's that sort of thing. Here's an example of moral principles from Polonius. Do you all know Polonius? You might remember him as Laertes' father, yeah? Yeah, Laertes, anyone? No? Okay, you might not. He's a character in Hamlet. Polonius is, so is Laertes. That's how they're related, through the play. Also, father. Polonius lays out these moral principles for Laertes to follow while he travels to France. And while they sound perfectly valid, they don't allow for any wiggle room. They are strict. It would be fair to say that Polonius is what we call a moral principalist. He believes there is no reason to go against this sound advice. So you might have heard some of these lines before, like, neither a borrower nor a lender be, and to thine own self be true. I asked a colleague if they knew where these quotes came from. And they said, I don't know, probably the Bible? That's how much these sound like principles. They sound like they were given from up on high. Moral principalists believe in a purely binary morality. Things are either good or bad. Things are right or wrong. Moral principalists are not fun at parties. Polonius, who you might remember from the slide before, remember Laertes' father, he claimed to be moral, but he actually spends the whole play interfering in other people's business. He spies, he spreads rumours. This ultimately leads to him being stabbed while he's hiding behind a curtain in a case of mistaken identity. Hamlet stabs him right in the curtain. But what does this have to do with design? So design is a process of planning or an attempt to realise an intention for a thing. Is anyone a designer in this room? Excellent. As I see the stress in your faces. So trying to get the intention of a thing, and that thing might be a website, could be a costume, could be a building, $50 note. You could try to design a great new drug that all the kids are going to crave at parties. You might try to design a magazine that tells other designers about which designers are doing great design and how they do that great design. And design and ethics are not natural bedfellows. They need to be encouraged together because design has many stakeholders, and a lot of them control money or the access to it. And money is not inherently ethical. It's also not inherently unethical. It just is. But money leads people to make many decisions that harm people. So we need to keep it in mind. So just, more lecturing from me. I found it useful to make a distinction for a lot of people when talking about principles and goals, to draw an analogy with sport. Because my personal metaphor, my personal visual model, mental model for a goal is from the game soccer. You might know it as football. I know it as soccer. The goal is on a soccer pitch. It stands by itself and a team of people have to work together to reach it. If they collaborate and communicate, they try to outsmart the opposition, they will find their chance to reach the goal. Principles are the rules of the game. Breaking them is cheating. You have a ball, you need to get to the goal, but you're not allowed to touch it with your hands. And you're not allowed to touch another player. Those are the principles of soccer. Principles can be seen as constraints to achieving goals, or they can be seen as guides to let you know you have achieved your goal without creating some kind of harm or unfairness. So let's look at a couple of things that were definitely created with a set of principles and so therefore should be considered ethical. This is a drawing of an M16 rifle. It was designed with principles. The principles are very separate to its goal. So the goals of its design were to produce a rifle that could be switched from fully automatic to semi-automatic as required. It needed to be able to use ammunition more efficiently than its predecessor, the much publicised AR-15. It had to be reasonably lightweight, weighs less than 4 kilograms. And most specifically, its ammunition had to be able to pierce a 1960s military helmet. Those are the goals. Meanwhile, some of the principles upheld during the design of the M16 rifle were that warfare demands that a military must defend itself and that a good defence is to eliminate an attacker. Victory in warfare is fundamental to maintain a people's identity when they're under attack. Victory is more likely with a better arsenal than that which the enemy can access. So the great thing about philosophy is that it can be an opportunity to just posit arsehole questions like this and just leave them hanging. It has a set of principles, therefore it has ethics, but would you call it ethical? So, there's obviously a pun here about M16s and being triggering, but I want to move on to a subject that's actually less violent and emotionally wrought. Double muscle pigs are a wonder of modern science. Originally using the gene editing enzyme known as TALEN, and more recently the highly publicised CRISPR, which no doubt everyone's heard of, just hoping. It's more popular than Polonius, CRISPR. It's a collaboration between Chinese and Korean scientists and it produced a set of pigs, literally with muscles on top of their muscles, particularly on their rumps. And I'm going to leave you to do your own searches for images of this. I'm not going to start showing them here. We have a code of conduct and no naked pigs should be seen, but I drew a picture of a pig and I was very proud of it. The goals of the Double Muscle Pig project were to see if TALEN could be used to cut myostatin. Myostatin is the gene that regulates muscle growth. So if you cut that gene out, you can produce a pig that can provide more meat per oink than other varieties. That's it. It's a simple goal. A growing population needs to be fed more meat. Let's grow a pig that has more meat on it. The principles of the Double Muscle Pig project are much more difficult to infer. Different universities have different ethics committees and they must seek approval from those ethics committees. This was produced by scientists at 2 different universities in 2 different countries. The scientists Shi Junyin from China and Korea's Jin-Soo Kim declare that they do not intend for these pigs to be farmed. Instead, they're going to sell the sperm from double muscle pigs to farmers who can then impregnate sows on their farm, which will produce animals that only have half their myostatin genes. Or, if you prefer the other side, half their myostatin genes are missing. This is intended to produce a smaller animal and a much healthier animal while still providing more porks per oink. And aren't rhetorical questions annoying? I need to declare my own biases here. I think the M16's primary purpose is to kill or wound many people in as short a period of time as possible, and that idea is abhorrent to me. I think double muscle pigs are monsters, engineered only for human greed without any foreseeable benefit to the continuation of the world. Everyone has biases. It's human. Often when we produce a set of principles, we reveal our biases through what we omit. Usually what we omit are the exceptions and our responsibility to them. So here's another bias. I design for money. It's not a hobby, it's a profession. I'm a professional designer. I get paid. Hopefully we all get paid. But as soon as we get paid, there's an opportunity for us to be corrupted. That's just the nature of money. More on that shortly. Moral particularism, so we were talking about moral principlism before. Moral particularism suggests that principles are flawed because it's impossible to make a single declaration that will always be useful for all situations. It's not that principles are irrelevant, it's more that they're not universal, they're not eternal or robust. Principles make it too easy to be hypocritical. Or in Polonius's case, they make it too easy to just be a middling arsehole who gets what he deserves. The most basic example is that we can agree that killing someone is wrong, but if we kill our assailant in the process of defending ourselves, it's justifiable. There are exceptions applicable to every principle, which means the principle cannot be to its own self true. So if principles don't hold true for every situation, why did I tell you to do this at the start of the talk? Principles are still really important for a project, and they're paramount to the work that we do as designers. They're equal in importance to the idea from which the design grows. They give us a guidance to help avoid bringing something truly reprehensible into the world. Something truly reprehensible is what Mikhail Kalashnikov created. It's like Kalashnikov. Don't get them mixed up. This is a quote he wrote to the head of the Russian Orthodox Church just 2 years before he died. His rifle was the gun that the US military was trying to out-design when they created the M16. Moral principles exist in stasis. They might be true now, but they might not be true in different circumstances. That's the point of moral particularism. It's true that the principles behind the design of the M16 were contrary to human safety. I mean, for fuck's sake, they wanted to be able to pierce a military helmet. But they were not contrary to civilian safety. The principles we spoke about earlier were only with respect to the rifle being used in warfare. This is a perfect example of the old adage that we're always fighting the last war. When we design products, we need to think about the future. We need to think about future uses for the products we're making. Product design is not just about the physical or interactive product. It's also about its life after we use it. The end of life of a product needs to be built into its design. Similarly, which is really hard to say, its management needs to be built into it in other circumstances as well. What if the production of the M16 had built into it something that only made it possible to use in military circumstances? Or what if the US military never made the gun available to any market and only produced it for its own use? What happens when a double-muscled pig escapes from a double-muscled pig farm? The fences are breached. The pigs run out, powered by their massive rumps. Selective breeding has already created a pig significantly different from wild pigs. Could double-muscled pigs survive in the wild? Or would their bulk adversely affect their bones and joints? Would they destroy wild habitats? Will farmers stick to breeding pigs with only half the myostatin of normal pigs? Or will they breed them together so that they can start making their own breed of truly over-muscly pigs to maximise the amount of meat they can produce? You might start thinking, we can't really talk about morality and design without talking about the way businesses work to earn money to continue to pay us to design. So that's all a bit heavy. So we're just going to do a little bit of this is what I do for work as a nice break. All right, so everyone breathe. We're going to look at how good businesses work. There's a tool that I use in my teams when we're working with businesses called the lean value tree. We use it to try to align businesses to work towards common goals, which all serve a single common vision. This is what it looks like. At the top, you have the vision. And the vision is an unreachable, almost unrealistic view of the future. Something like end world hunger is a great vision for a company. Almost impossible to achieve, but something really good to strive for. You would fall asleep excited thinking about it every night. Dream about it. Goals are realistic, but still outrageous. You might try to end hunger in your own country. Still really difficult to do, but seemingly more achievable. Then you have the bet layer. The bets can take on the form of hypotheses that you might be familiar with, like having too much information below the edge of the screen, needing to scroll up. We believe that that's a bad way to do a talk. Or, using the end world hunger vision, we believe that if we can successfully farm plankton, we can create a low-cost, easily distributable food. And then the bottom layer is your initiatives. This is where the product you design sits within the business. There are lots of initiatives that are all producing lots of value that all go towards proving the bets true or false, that work towards the goals, that make the vision more credible. Each layer has its own measure of success, which provides a definition of value to the whole tree, so it becomes easy to see if each piece is doing its own part. This is how modern business works. This is how modern business thinks. And there's one glaring omission from this picture. Guiding principles aren't mentioned anywhere in the lean value tree. There's no prioritisation of principles or discussion of morality. The measures of success are usually some kind of score from a survey or something that is actually countable. Our measures of success only look at the positive side of our benefit. There's no sense of a measure of failure if, for example, we managed to end world hunger, but only because we started serving the poor human flesh while pretending it was some kind of plant product. Money, its accumulation, the mere idea of wealth, it creates a bias in the work we perform. We cannot ignore our understanding of people's relationship to money when designing products. These things are unavoidable. Sometimes they're inherent in the purpose of the design. That's definitely the case for the double muscle pigs. The only reason for them to exist is to increase yield. Sometimes these biases only reveal themselves later. During the very poorly titled Cold War, the most popular weapons in armed combat were the AK-47, created by Mikhail Kalashnikov, sold by the Soviet Union, and the M16, sold by the United States. And of course, the United States, having some unnatural relationship with the concept of guns, the M16 was also sold to civilians, just in case they one day needed to create a militia to protect their union. After the Cold War ended, so was the AK-47. So that's progress. It's not enough for us to design with principles now. We need to design with a set of if this, then that instructions that get us to what the moral particularists call moral status. The moral status is about how moral your product or actions are at this moment. And a great example of that, and something that finally gets us back to the web, Rick's been giving you looks, is YouTube. YouTube's current moral status is low. Last month, Bloomberg reported that executives had been repeatedly petitioned by employees to remove harmful conspiracy theory videos from the site. New data in the Bloomberg article says that there are fewer than 20 anti-vaccination channels on YouTube, but they bring in more than 170 million viewers. To put that in perspective, each episode of Game of Thrones is viewed... Does anyone watch Game of Thrones? Is that a popular show?
Yes.
This man loves it. It's seen by about 15 million Americans when it airs first time. Sunday night, 15 million Americans watch the second last episode of Game of Thrones, and we're a little bit disappointed and worried.
No spoilers, please.
I think disappointed and worried basically covers Game of Thrones from season 2 up until now. The population of Australia is 25 million. 170 million viewers is a lot. It's 1,700 MCGs worth of people. It's Melbourne, so I have to put everything in terms of how many MCGs fit into a number. YouTube's algorithms create recommendations for other conspiracy videos based on other people's viewing habits. So it keeps feeding people lies that they might like. And these videos create real harm. But YouTube says that its driving force was engagement. Their goal was to increase engagement, and they seemed to be guided by their goals and not their principles. A reminder that principles are separate to goals. Goals are something we strive towards. Principles are the rules by which we use to get us there. YouTube's CEO, a little over a year ago at South by Southwest, claimed that YouTube was really more like a library. But let's put aside for the moment that that is just clear bullshit. In libraries are carefully curated, categorised, and access is overseen by highly trained professionals who stand behind desks. She was standing behind a principle of free speech. She was placing free speech as the principle that, for YouTube, outweighed all others. Except that now, YouTube's principled stance puts them in a very low moral status. Now they are parasites, sucking our engagement and creating measles epidemics. YouTube's a big company. It's owned by Google, an even bigger company. They once claimed to not be evil. They're owned by Alphabet, and nobody knows what their principles are. How do you avoid the mistakes YouTube made? You need to create a process to assess situations, heed warnings, make decisions according to your principles, not according to your goals. Look at the environment that you're in. When the thing you're designing starts to look like it's going off the rails, like it might hurt someone, like it might have far-reaching, unintended consequences that you can't control, look at what you can control in that moment. Look to see if, for example, freedom of speech is a more important principle than avoid harmful activities at this moment in time, right now. Ask yourself if your craving for engagement is more important to you than the harm you might be causing, and try to assess your moral status in that moment. Are you justified? Are you just following orders? Are you out of your depth? When we design things, we're responsible for all the experiences that stem from our design. We build that responsibility into what we build. We need to be careful with how we shape it and who we let take it into their hands. Morality isn't a simple binary process. It's messy and complicated and changes from moment to moment. As designers, we have to try to anticipate as many of those moments as possible and make sure we're doing the right thing. Thanks. Get back!